All right, welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about dating and the complicated landscape. Here are some things to avoid doing when you're dating. If you're new to this channel, my name is Daniel. I am a post-psychology student here to share with you the things that I've learned so you don't have to pay for tuition, so you don't have to go to college to learn this stuff. I can give you the tidbits for the psychology-related content. Look, when it comes to dating, the first thing we want to avoid doing, and it's so common, is being the chameleon. Changing ourselves. So what happens is we meet somebody, we see that they're a certain way and that they like certain things. And what do? We change ourselves so we become the thing that we think they desire. In other words, you meet someone, and this happens so much that we hear jokes about it online. They love sports. So what do we say? Oh, I love sports too. Basketball? I love basketball. Yeah. Touchdown and all that good stuff. I'm right there with you. It's a hole-in-one, right? That love? Is that how that works? Folks, it comes from a nice place, right? We think, oh, we want to be looked at in a nice light. But what ends up happening is an individual figures out that you're faking it, and think about what that is for setting the foundation of your relationship. It's based on what? It's not based on honesty. It's not based on credibility. It's certainly not based on authenticity. It's actually the opposite. It's based on manipulation and how can I change your perception so you can look at me in a better light, rather than just being honest, not trying to change ourselves into the thing that this person might want. Just because he's a vegetarian doesn't mean you have to pretend to be one. Just because she loves certain movies doesn't mean you have to pretend to love those movies too. And actually, when we start being more honest about what we like and disagree, people surprisingly like that. Now, in moderation, we don't want to disagree with everything. We don't want to be complete opposites. But if every once in a while someone says something and you just flat out go, no, actually, I would much rather prefer this, it tells the person, oh, they're honest and they're not afraid of sharing their opinion. And I can trust them to be honest with me, which, folks, is an amazing step in the right direction. So number one, avoid changing yourself into whatever you think the person wants you to be, okay? Number two, abandon perfectionism. Unfortunately, with things like dating apps, we have this criteria, we have this checklist, and I touched on this topic before at an earlier date. We have these ideas of these things you want people to have. And in society, we'd say, oh, we have standards. These are my standards. I don't want to lower them for anybody. Here's the thing. Nobody's perfect. So when I go out into the dating market with these perfect checklists of she's got to look a certain way, she's got to be a certain height, she's got to have a certain hair, she's got to be a certain size, she's got to have a certain sense of humor, the chances that I'm going to meet somebody which they check all of those things is extremely slim. What if I meet someone amazing who's kind and funny and ambitious, but maybe they don't look like the supermodels I've seen on Instagram? So I leave her, and then I go with someone else who looks absolutely sensational, but doesn't have the humor or maybe the kindness that I'm also looking for. It's very hard to get everything that we want in one person. And maybe the roles are reversed. Maybe you want to meet someone who's tall and funny and confident and makes a lot of money and is successful and is ambitious and works out a lot. You might meet someone who has 3 out of those 5 things, 4 out of those 5 things. But please, folks, do not let a perfect checklist prevent you from meeting someone. Why? We're all flawed. We can all improve. And if we set out with these perfect checklists, people are more likely to go back to thing number 1 to pretend to be something that they're not. I know you like rich guys, so I put on the fanciest watch that I have, right? Or I know you like ambitious people, so I rented a car that's not even mine, so I can pretend to show you that I'm more wealthy than I actually am. So if we don't do number 2, if we still look for perfectionism, people are more likely to go back to number 1, which is pretending to be something that they're not in order to please the other person. Now, I know it's controversial, but what I'm saying is not, well, it actually kind of is lower your standards, but it's accept people with their flaws. That doesn't mean you accept everyone, but that means, look, instead of saying you have to have 10 out of 10 things, look, you might have 6 out of 10 things, 7 out of 10 things. That's okay. We can still make it work. And the more discriminatory we are, it's fine, but just recognize that the applicant pool for you is going to be less and less and less and less. I will only date a multimillionaire. That's fine. But just think to yourself, how many multimillionaires do you know that are in your age range, that live close to you, that are single, that would be interested in you. Ladies and gentlemen, case dismissed. Okay, so that was number 2. Number 3. So the first one we talked about was don't be a chameleon. Okay, don't fake being something that you're not. Number 2 was don't look for perfectionism. Number 3, and look, they're all related, right? This is how genius this is. Accept people for who they are. Accept people for who they are. If you want to talk about acceptance, Carl Rogers just nailed this point home so much. He said, look, Carl Rogers was a famous therapist for those who don't know. He says, anybody that stepped foot in my office, whether you cheated on your partner, whether you were abused as a kid, whether you were homosexual, whatever it is, in his time there was a lot of stigma. I accept you for who you are. You may have taken someone's life, but when you walk into my office, I accept you as you are. I don't immediately look at you as something else or try to change you. I take it for what it is. Folks, this is so important because what happens is we meet people, and girls really like to do this. They like to fix, right? We want to fix people. And fixing means what? It means you meet someone and they're a little bit not all there. And we say to ourselves, well, spending time with me, I'm going to make you kinder. I'm going to make you more ambitious. I'm going to have a positive influence on your life. And even though at first it sounds like this beautiful angel, heroic thing. Oh, what a selfless lady. She wants to take this man under her wing and help him out. You got to dig underneath that and go, why him? Why do you want to date someone that needs fixing? Why not go with someone who isn't in a bad place with trauma where they might need therapy? Or they don't have an attachment style that is going to make it harder to be with them. Why? Because secretly, women gain something from that. It feels good. It's an ego boost. Look at what I did. He was like this, and he was sleeping around with a whole bunch of women, but after dating me, I changed him. He's a different person now. In my time of studying psychology for 4.5 years, in my time of speaking with clinical psychologists, social workers, even sociologists, and counselors, I have never heard of a story where one person changed another person without, here's the kicker, that other person taking the initiative. Meaning, if I go out on a date and I think to myself, I don't like how you are, but maybe I can change you. I can turn you into something that I want. Unless you want to do it too, you're not changing. There's just no way. If you don't believe me, ask parents how easy it is to change their children. And I don't mean when they're 5, 6 years old necessarily, but when they're 12, 13, 14, 15. Ask any married couple how easy it is to just wave a wand and change your husband's or your wife's habits. How easy it is for you to change them without them wanting to change themselves. That's why I say, when you meet someone, if women wearing very promiscuous clothing makes you feel uncomfortable, and then you meet a girl and she's great, but she's wearing that stuff, and you're thinking, well, I'm going to change her, it's going to be a very tough task. Unless she's willing to, unless she wants to. She's willing to be like, look, if that's what you need to be in this relationship, okay, I'll do this for you. Or vice versa. Ladies, if you're meeting a guy who loves to flirt, he flirts with anything that moves, and you think to yourself, well, after dating for a while, I'm going to tell him that he needs to stop flirting, that he needs to stop being a playboy, that he needs to stop going out as much as he does. It's not impossible, but it'll be difficult. If you're not comfortable dating a girl who wears certain kind of clothing, why go for her to begin with? If you're not comfortable being in a relationship with a guy who's very charming and charismatic, and he's out there and he's got a lot of relationships with a lot of different people, and maybe there's a jealousy factor there, why go after that guy to begin with? Right? So look, people change over time naturally. We grow and we change, and that's beautiful. But if at the very early stages I'm thinking, I don't really like these couple of things that you do, I'm going to try to change you over the next couple of weeks, it's a very tall ask. It's a very, very, very tall ask, folks. Here's the next one. Recognize that people's attachment styles play a huge role. Okay? And what happens is sometimes I know you've seen people and you're thinking, why would she be attracted to him? He's such a terrible guy. He treats her terribly, or vice versa. What does he see in her? She's so mean to him all the time and she's a jerk and she doesn't spend time with him, whatever it is. Sometimes you'll meet someone, folks, and then you recognize that the way they've grown up, whether it be through their attachment style or their parenting or past relationships, the way they communicate love or just the way they interact with a loving partner is extremely foreign from the way you would do it. And that doesn't mean we can't love people or be in relationships with people who are different than us. But for example, if you're meeting someone and they don't like any physical intimacy whatsoever, and you establish that very early on, but maybe you grew up in a household where you were very physically intimate. You were always getting hugs and kisses from your parents and from your grandparents. That's something to keep in mind. If you're meeting a guy on a couple dates, but he doesn't open up, he doesn't enjoy opening up, he will not open up, nobody in his family opened up, just remember that to use Sadia Khan's words, you're competing with his past. You're competing with his childhood, that this way that this individual grew up was to shell up, was to stay closed, was to not open up. So now you going, I'm going to change him. Folks, this person might need therapy. This person might not even want to change. And again, it's not anything that I'm saying, folks. It's not like line in the sand, Daniel says it, so it is. But it's important to keep this in mind. It's going to make our lives a little bit trickier. If I'm used to being close with someone and seeing them constantly, let's say once a week, but the girl that I'm dating thinks that's too much. Oh my God, I'm suffocating. I can see you once a month. It's going to set us up for not failure, but there are going to be some harder battles or harder fights or taller walls that we're going to have to get over to make sure that this relationship can be smooth. So, I know this is a quicker one. I just want you to keep these things in mind when you go out into the dating world. Once again, we are talking about not changing ourselves for another person. We are talking about not expecting perfectionism from the people that we see. Then we talked about accepting people for who they are, rather than going in there with the mindset of, I want to change you. And finally, recognizing that people's habits and behaviors oftentimes come from childhood. And if we see certain things that are immediately different to us, don't take it personally. Don't think to yourself, oh, this person doesn't like me, that's why they're not being affectionate. Them not being affectionate could have nothing to do with you and everything with how they were raised and how they learned to just interact with the world around them. So that's not what they're interested in. I know there's plenty of dating stuff out there. I'm always interested, folks. What are your thoughts? What do you think about this? Do you agree with what I've said? Do you completely disagree with what I've said? Do you have other tips or interesting things that you think we should consider when going out into dating? I am always interested in hearing about it. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Please stay safe and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.